Please, if there's a break in my internet, please let me know. I am somewhere in Sierra Leone where we might have interruptions, and I apologize in advance. Good morning. Today we're going to go through the results and discussion sections of the manuscripts. It's our 1 hour session as usual. And Toby, I hand over the management of the waiting room to you. Thank you. So just as a reminder, this is part of a series. We started with what is a research. First of all, we'll introduce ourselves to the entire series. We then went on to talk about what a research is. Today, we are going to be discussing about how to write the results and discussion section of your manuscripts. Once again, this is focused on manuscript writing. I once again acknowledge that everybody has a personal standard for manuscript writing. Many times when people write manuscripts, you are able to identify the person by the writing of their manuscript. I had once seen a manuscript of a friend, and when I saw the content, I said, this is not our style. I also remember doing, one of those many blogs that people send around and attribute it to someone. And I saw one that they wrote about Professor Wale Soyinka, that he was the one that wrote it. I said, it cannot be him, because that is not his style. So people over time, the way you write, there's a style attributed to you, and people would know this is you writing this manuscript. It's also very important to acknowledge that your decision as to where you want to submit your manuscript is yours. And many times we set personal goals for where we want to publish a manuscript. Personally, I would not submit to a journal that is not Scopus indexed. And within the Scopus index manuscript journals, I won't go for one that is less than a Q2 journal. Okay? I won't go for one that is less than a Q2 journal. It's my personal goal. And it's because I want visibility for my manuscript. I want thorough peer review, because when you go to those kind of journals, Q1, Q2, they do thorough peer review. They spend time, because it also affects their reputation. And when there's thorough peer review, the quality of your manuscript improves, and it can be adopted for use by policymakers, by evidence-based decision-making by WHO. It has to be taught. And like I shared in the past, I saw my manuscript being used for the generation of global disease burden, 2 of them, and I celebrated it. Albeit I celebrated on my own, but it was a big deal. Because what it's saying is that the quality of that publication was good enough for them to find the data of use. Finally, to note that I am spending time running this manuscript workshop based on my own experience. As many of you may be aware, I have over 320 publications in peer-reviewed journals. And I have come to a point where when I send out my manuscript for publication, rarely do I get a reject, rarely. Well, if I do get, it's like, oh, the journal is, this is a wrong journal, it's not a journal fit. For example, recently I sent a manuscript on traditional medicine and oral health to PMC Oral Health, and they said, no, it's not theirs. I went to another journal, and they said, no, they don't take this series of manuscripts. So it may be a wrong place. Or if I have found out that if you follow these rules that I would share with you, rarely would you get a reject. You will get comments that ask you to improve the quality of your writing, but rarely would you get a reject. So I didn't learn it anywhere. I only learned it from experience. And I learned it by reading other people's manuscripts, spending time reading people's manuscripts, understanding where they're coming from, and also reading the reviewer's comments and adhering to it. One of the things I would like to share with you was how I started writing. When I started writing, I knew I didn't have guidance. I didn't have anybody training me. But what I did consistently was send the manuscript to a Q1 journal. I knew they would come back with comments. The comments might be as long as, 5-6 pages. In the past, they would give they'll give comments, even if they reject it, even if they reject your manuscript. And so I'll spend time using those comments and revising the manuscript. The second thing is that I'll have a manuscript of a Q1 level journal that is similar to what I want to write, and I'll follow it line by line. Oh, this is what they talked about. I'll do. Oh, their first line was about the study. I just follow it as an SOP. And that was how I started writing and learning to write. And when I corrected based on the peer reviewers' comments, I sent it to another Q1 level journal. And rarely do I get a reject. So also note that you can do this on your own. I tell people that in my life of publishing, 320 and above, I've had my paper went straight to publication only twice, without comments, only twice. And believe me, the first one ever was the first paper I wrote. The first paper I ever wrote on my own went straight to publication in a Q1 level journal. Just went straight. In those days, they would do all the editing. There was no correction. It was the first I ever wrote in my life. The second happened maybe about 2 or 3 years ago. So be willing to go through the thorough path. It improves your writing, it improves your communication, it improves your visibility. Once again, we make the choices. You have your choice to make. So now let's go to the results. You have done your methodology. You are now presenting your results. I am sharing with you key notes you should take, and also noting that the key messages helps you to distinguish how you write manuscript as opposed to writing thesis. In the results section, what you want to present is the answer to the objectives of the study. In your thesis, you would spend time writing all the bulubala and doing 1,000,001 things. No, in thesis, you focus on the answer to your objective. I repeat it. You focus on the answer to your objective. You don't report things that are extraneous to your results, to your objective. The first paragraph in your result is the descriptive. I apologize once again. This is biomedical, heavy biomedical, but I'll try to adapt it to qualitative. The very first paragraphs in your result is a description of your variables of interest. So if your variable of interest was to look at an association between age, sex, and socioeconomic status with the length of hair on my head. So I will report these 4 variables. How many people were 13 to 14 years old, or whatever, however you categorized it. How many people were male as opposed to female? How many people were in low socioeconomic strata? And then how many people had long hair versus short hair? So I would report the variables related to I'll report the descriptives of the variables that are of interest. Of course, if it's qualitative, the first paragraph gives a description of the people you recruited, the background information. How many people did you contact? How many people did not did not respond? So you give the descriptive and the description of those that responded to your qualitative assessment. You give a description. So the first paragraph, be it qualitative or quantitative research, is to give a description of the background variables. The next, if it's qualitative, you go on and report your results. Once again, report your result as against the objective. If it's quantitative, you then go on to report the test of association between your dependent or your independent variables. And then your third paragraph reports the result of your inferential analysis, which is your regression analysis. Once again, the key thing is to focus on the objective, answering your objective. Why do I say this? For many of us that do quantitative analysis, if you are not careful, you will be distracted by other interesting associations you are seeing. You will be distracted by other interesting associations that is not answering your objective, and you will be reporting them. No, it doesn't work like that. Why? For one, when you are doing inferential analysis many times, you will have your dependent variable, your independent variable, and your confounders, which you want to regress against. Your confounders you do not report about. But when you do the test of association, you will now find some associations between your dependent, your independent variable and your confounders. You will find some association. You don't report those associations with confounders. Confounders are supposed to control your results. You don't report it and you don't discuss it. Once you start to report and discuss those your associations with your confounders, you are doing something called table 2 fallacy. Table 1 fallacy. Yes, that's what it's called. It's wrong. It's nothing to report. It's nothing of interest. You're not supposed to go there. Your focus is on the association between your dependent and your independent variable, and that's what you report. So you go on and be finding something else in association. I'm emphasizing this because I see it a lot. The second thing I also see a lot in this, which is a problem, a big problem, and I would like to report the problem I have with my own mentee. I also have a young mentee who is now writing, but is starting to write wrongly. When you learn to write wrongly, it's a struggle. It's a struggle to do the right thing. I've seen that too many times. And I as a mentor, I get frustrated. Once you have started to write wrongly, you find out that even when you get these lessons, you easily fall back to the wrong way you have been writing. And it's because you get published, even if it's the wrong way. You get published, and so you're happy with publication. And I'm encouraging you. It is not about publishing. You are not here to amass number of publication. You will get it. You will get it at the end of the day. But that's not your primary objective. Your primary objective is to generate information that it will improve the well-being and the welfare of people. Therefore, when you do research, you answer a gap in knowledge. And your objective must have social value. I repeat, when you do research, you answer a gap in knowledge, a knowledge that will give is of social value. And therefore, when you are reporting, it's not about looking for anything that has p-value association. You are very focused when you define your objective. Your result is answering the objective, whether the p-value is significant or not. And you let them know there's no significance. You found no association. It's not about shopping. This is very key, because I see it many times in the results section where there is just no focus. It's about running after a p-value. One of my mentors, one of the major crises I continue to have with him is you find out that he's looking for associations. In table 1, we have defined what our dependent variable is and our independent variable. But table 1, we will do association between our dependent variable and independent variable. The next time, our independent variable then becomes dependent. The next time, our confounder then becomes dependent. And it doesn't work like that. No Q1, Q2 paper will take that. You have to stay true to your objective. If you find anything interesting, go and report it in another manuscript. But this one manuscript, you stay true to the objective and only report what the objective is. I think I've emphasized that enough. But I emphasize it because it's a very, very common problem. Like I have noted always, that the shortest part of your manuscript is usually the results. The paragraph should report on specific outcomes. A paragraph, when you start, like I've said, the first paragraph is your descriptive of your variables, including your response rate. Ideally, when you're collecting data, you should also collect the data of those, the baseline data of those that are not responding. Because it helps us to know if whatever is left, the number of respondents left, are representative of the general of the population. So if you aim to collect data from 100 people, you ended up collecting data from 80, it's very powerful to be able to show us the baseline data of the 20 that did not participate, and show that the profile of the 80 people did not differ from the profile of the 20 people. This way, we can say that at the end of the day, this data is truly representing the target population for the study. I had also discussed before now that the sample size is very important. Some other day during this training, I will focus exclusively on teaching you about sample size, why it is important. This is for quantitative study. For qualitative study, you must show that your sample size, you got to saturation. It's very important. It's true 12 might be important, but I have been doing a number of qualitative study with a number of international partners, and you see that they run for large numbers, 254, 40 something. This is the numbers because you have to, beyond reasonable doubt, show that you truly got to saturation. So the first paragraph tells us about this background. Like I said, you want to show that there isn't a significant difference between those that did not participate and those that participated. Once your sample size is falling below 15% of your target, you're starting to have problems. That study will be considered not to be powered enough to answer the study objective. I repeat, once you have a fallout of 15% of your sample size, that study will be considered not to be powered enough to answer, the study objective. Once again, I commit to taking a session on sample size. Don't be distracted with other interesting findings. There are always many interesting findings. Your thesis, you can put all those interesting findings in the results. Don't just focus on the objective. No matter how interesting or novel your findings are, please only report the answer to your study objective. Many times I see many manuscripts where there are 10, 15, 7, 8, multiple tables is overtaking things. No. Ideally, everything you want to say should be with 5 tables, you will get it. What I think I have seen with many people is they don't know how to write a comprehensive table. So a table that should otherwise be presented as 1, they are presenting it as 3, 4. That's the problem I see when I see all these multiple tables, Uche, please put off your video. Thank you. And it's because it's a problem for bandwidth. What's his name? Toby, please help me to put off videos. Thank you. Just a minute, yeah. Thank you. So 5 tables is okay. 5 tables is actually a lot. There are many of my publications that is a single table. Just everything is in a single table. But it's skills I've learned that it's skills everybody, it doesn't come overnight, but you must learn how to put tables together in a way that is comprehensive. And by the time you're actually done with 3 tables, you'll find out that you actually have said all you want to say. The most other important thing is that tables, there are 3 pieces of your manuscript that must be able to stand alone. If I pick up a piece of paper and I am picking up the table, That table must be able to tell me everything it wants to say without me looking for the narrative. And it starts from the labeling. From the labeling. Okay? It starts from the labeling. And I'll show you some of these examples as we go on. The second part of your manuscript that must stand alone without me reading the entire manuscript is the abstract. We will be discussing about abstract next week. It must tell the whole story without me going to read the main manuscript. And the third, of course, is the manuscript. The manuscript must say everything it wants to say without me picking a call and say, Toby, what is it that you are saying here? Okay. Another way of representing your results is by figures. Figures are very powerful. And what happens is that with figures and with tables, you reduce the narrative. When you have a table, in your narrative, you don't say everything. It's not usual. For example, if you did a binary of your sex into male and female, you don't say out of 100 participants, I got 18 females and 20 males. No, you just report, either you report the females, I got 80 females. That's enough, because the table will show the remaining. Okay, so you just report one key thing and let your table or your figure show what it is. So once you have figures and table, your narrative becomes shorter. You don't have to repeat it's not appropriate. You already have what you are reporting as a summary of a table. Okay. So let's look at some example. When you have to report your results, visuals are very important. I have in my own study team people who use visuals very powerfully. My friend Nadia, she's on my team, and I moved Nadia everywhere I'm going on adolescent sexual and reproductive health. I move Nadia with me. If you give Nadia an opinion piece, Nadia will generate a table from it. Nadia is not only my queen of English, she's my queen of table generation. She generates tables in any way. And you know what? Tables makes it visual. There are some people that don't like words. They like the visual and they can relate with it. And I keep telling Nadia that because of our ability to do visuals, even for opinion piece, we really get a reject because it makes it more interesting. If you have that power, use it. Another person on my team that is very powerful with visual is Dr. Adeniyi. Give Adeniyi an opinion piece. Before you know it, she's going to draw figures representative of that. I call her my visual queen. You know, she says, there was a paper we wrote together and she didn't put the visual. I said, where's your visual? She said, and she felt that she's overusing it. I said, no, she has the power to turn everything into visuals. And she will draw the figure representing it. Very powerful. So if you can do that, make good use of it, because it makes it shorter, concise, and it helps other people who can't engage with the narrative to engage with the visuals. Tables are the most often used and maybe overused for all I know. But figures also have a place. They are not the same as tables, they have places, and we'll be talking about them right now. This is an example of a table. 3 things that becomes very important even as we're relating with this table, and I'll continue. First of all, this is a summary, but this table is summarizing. And you will see a number of things that you should note as we go on to talk about tables. You see that this table was labeled about what it's supposed to be. You would notice that this table has very few lines. In between the tables, there are no lines. The table only has 3 lines. The line beneath the summary, the line before the content, and the line at the end. 3 lines. And there are no lines in between. If you're going to a Q1, Q2 journal, this is how you draw your tables. There are no lines, there are no bars within. But like I said, there are things that are important. If you want to represent raw data, you use tables. If you want to show trends or interactions, you use a line graph. If you want to draw comparison, you use a bar graph. If you want to show relationships of pathway, you use diagrams or flowchart. Flowchart is very powerful when you're doing sequencing. If you want to classify information, you can use a pictogram. I'll show you one of the power of the pictogram. I'll tell you that the pictogram was the beginning of my career in doing early childhood caries. One of my most powerful publication had pictograms, and it was that pictogram that people picked and used in many conferences. When I saw one of the topmost researchers in my field presenting at an international conference, it was because I had the pictogram. It was the pictogram in the paper that he picked to make a presentation. So if you want to contract, you can use a pictogram, a pie chart, or bar graph. If you want to talk about proportions, you use a pie chart. If you want to just discuss causative, you can use a pictogram or flowchart. So there are various things. Let's start with discussing the tables. So this is a table. Once again, if you see it, it's labeled. You have the underline, the line below the label, the line before you discuss the main content, and then the lines below. Those are the time you do not find lines within the content of the table. That's very important. But what I want to show, what I want to show with these two tables that you're seeing, two tables are the same. They are the same content. They are the same content. They are the same content. However, there's one that is more visually pleasing than the other. I would assume the one below is more visually pleasing than the one above. It's easier to relate with the one below than the one above. It's representing the same thing. But please, I do appreciate that there are ways you will write to present your tables. Usually the dependent variables are in the column and the independent variables are in the rows. There is something else I want to bring out from this table. If you look at this table, it's full of acronyms that has no meaning. You tend to find many people write with so much acronyms that a whole sentence can have 5 acronyms and it becomes meaningless. Reduce your use of acronyms. I repeat, reduce your use of acronyms because it makes reading of manuscripts difficult. The rule of the use of acronyms is that you only use acronyms when you are using it in your manuscript more than 3 times. When you are using the word more than 3 times in your manuscript, then it's okay to use acronyms. When you are using it less than 3 times, there's no need for acronyms. Just spell it out. For me, I don't even use it. I just walk through my manuscripts. I really go that way because it's easier to read rather than going to look for, what's the meaning of this? Especially when in a sentence, you have 3-4 acronyms in that sentence. It's difficult to read. It's also the same here. As you can see, I'm sure nobody here is able to understand what they wrote here. It's all acronyms. It's not a matter of whether you are in the field or not. The third thing to also note with is that once you have acronyms, please put the definition of the acronym immediately below the tables. Immediately below the tables, please define the acronyms. Immediately below the tables, please define the acronyms. And if an effective title, we're going to talk briefly about the title. An effective title should include what the subject is and enough detail to make sense without even looking at the text. For example, I have shared this acronym, this title, Sociodemographic Profile, Sociodemographics of NIMA staff. Look at the second one, the age, sex, and socioeconomic status of NIMA staff in 2019. And in brackets, I have put the N. The second one is the better one. The second one is the better one. You can see it is very clear. Without looking, you know what I'm going to find in the table. And please note that for a good labeling of your table, you must put the N in brackets. You must put the N in brackets. That's very important. Okay? When including a number of tables in one document, use the same terminology throughout. If I use age 14 to 15, 16 to 17 in table 1, use age 14 to 15, 16 to 17 in table 2. If I put age before sex in table 1, put age before sex in table 2. Don't now put sex before age in table 2. Be consistent in your presentation. If in table 1 I labeled it as socioeconomic status, in table 2 don't label it as social status. Be consistent with the use of terminology. Be consistent with the order of presenting the variables in your tables. These are line graphs. Line graphs show continuous variables, such as movement in time, speed. You can use a line graph. Okay? They tend to depict trend or complex things. And line graphs are more appropriate when you have continuous variables, continuous data, or when you're looking for, you're looking at trend 1990 to 2022. You can use line graphs when you're doing this kind of continuous data. There's a place for bar graphs. You use your bar graphs, You use your bar graphs when you're comparing size and magnitudes. Okay? They're more effective when they run in the direction that people are expecting you to see the data. For example, if you're representing temperature and weight, you then use the vertical. If you are representing time and distance and speed, you use the horizontal. Okay? They are bar graphs, but the way you use them also matters. So when I'm thinking of weight size, bar charts are used for comparison. They represent comparison values that you can compare. So if I'm looking at things like weight, temperature, I'll use the vertical. But if I'm looking at speed, time, distance, the horizontal might be more better to represent. This pie chart represents proportion. Okay, that best they represent proportion. What's the proportion of the whole? And you want to compare that. A pie chart is very good. Pictograph is powerful. Many people represent their heat charts with pictogram. So this is something like a pictogram. I'm sure many of you would have seen things like this. Either the top one, which is showing pictogram around the world, or like the lower one, which is looking at proportion within the context of a whole. Pictograms are very, very powerful. They are more effective when the symbols chosen represent the subject matter. For example, if you look at the one on access to electricity, the symbol is houses, because it's houses that are the homes that have access to this to electricity. Other times you might use heat graphs, which shows a place. You use blue when the comparison is very low. So I want to look at around the world to use the spread of people that have lung cancer. Where the prevalence is low, I use blue. Where the prevalence is high, I then use red, and in between I can use orange, something like that. So that shows a heat graph is also a form of pictogram. And then we use cartographs. Okay, people will know what scattergraphs are, and there's the relationship when you're showing multiple variables on a line. So a few words on the use of visuals. Many journals will specify for you the number, how to send your visuals. If it's figures, they will say send PDF, or if it's a picture, they will specify. Some also have limits in terms of number of tables and figures. For many of the Q1 journals, they will tell you they don't want more than 5. They might even tell you that don't send more than 5,000 words article, or if it's an opinion piece, it should not be more than 2,000 words. Some will even say don't send a number of references, don't send more than 30 references. Whatever it is, please adhere to the specification. One of the edicts, once again, I find with just a minute. One of the edicts I find with many of my junior mentees is that they don't even read instructions of the journals. You write the manuscript the way you want to write it, and then you want to send it off to the journal the way you have written it. It doesn't show respect for the journal. It doesn't even show respect for yourself. Please read every journal. The first place you go is go read the instruction and follow that instruction as they are required of you. All right, and once again, I keep saying the big deal about your publication is for it to be used by others, for it to be used by policy, for people to reference this as the baseline for their data. Presenting your data, all your data in your manuscript enables other people to reuse that data, including for systematic reviews. So for example, if you have data on children age 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, present the data of age 1, age 2, age 3, age 4, age 5, rather than say grouping them. Where it is possible not to group, just present the data. If you have the data, that's usually what the table 1 would do, to present your social demographic profile in its entirety, and then the next table might then summarize them. Present your data in a way that people can pick it. So if you present it like that, and I want to pick age 3, I will just pick age 3 from your data. But if you present it as the mean of age 1 to 5, I won't be able to use it if I needed data for only age 2 people. So as much as possible, present all the figures of your data as much as possible in your descriptive table, which is usually your table 1. Your table 2 and 3 then starts to show your analysis. Of course, in qualitative, you only present your narratives, including your quotes, appropriately. One of the things also to note in the presentation of quotes for qualitative, be concise. Limit your quotes to buttress your narrative to just two powerful quotes. Use those quotes that is saying something very different, something unique, something that is, well, we know this already. 2 quotes. If it's possible, 2 quotes, not 5, 6. It doesn't, it's not okay. Just 2, 3 quotes to buttress the point you are saying in your paragraph is enough. Visual illustrations, as I've shown you, has indicative use. Like the many pieces of the manuscript, your illustration and its label should be able to tell the story of the manuscript independent of the narrative. It should be a standalone without the narrative. I've already emphasized that. And one of the things that helps it to be a standalone is the proper labeling. If I pick up this table, I should know that what I'm looking at is the details, age, sex, and social demographic profile of the staff in NIMA. And this was the report was for 2019. I should be able to know that is what I'm holding. It's an independent story. And they are part of your manuscript. So the manuscript should otherwise be incomplete without it. Maximum 5 illustrations is adequate. The next piece is also your discussion. After you've wrote your results, you would also write your discussion. Please note that there are standards for the way to write discussion. I've seen people continue to struggle with this, but this is the truth. In the Q1, Q2 journal, there is a standard. Go once again to your reference guide, your research report reference guide. Go once again to it. There's a standard. I keep seeing people, despite the fact that I've gone to training and they've gone to training over and over, they don't adhere to this. If I am peer reviewing and you don't adhere to this, I can't read it. I just send it back. I can't read it. I truly cannot. The first paragraph is a summary of your study finding without writing the figures. This is where your summary comes in. Let me tell you one of the distinctions between a summary and the result. In your result, you should write that there were 25 in bracket 2.6.4% girls, 13 in bracket 25% were older than 20 years. That is your result. In your discussion, in that summary, you write that the studies show that 1 in 4 were girls and 1 in 3 were of low socioeconomic status. When you start to use the word 1 in 4, 1 in 3 is an interpretation. It's not your result. Many times I see people using this 1 in 4 in the results. They start to interpret their results in the results. That is a wrong way, and it will get you stopped. So in your result, write the result as it is. 22.5%, that is what you saw. 23.58%, that is what you saw. Report what you saw. In the discussion, you interpret it. So when you're not writing your summary, this is where you start to say 1 in 5, 6 in 2, because you would not be repeating the figures in the discussion again. You're starting your interpretation. So the first paragraph is a summary of the results finding. The next paragraph is the strength and the limitation. It's not the last paragraph. The next paragraph is the strength and the limitations of the study. Why do you report the strengths and limitations before the main discussion? You report the strengths and limitations because you help the readers understand the biases your study has introduced, and they can read the entire manuscript understanding this bias. It's not at the end. Please go check your research guidelines. This is how you are expected to report. It is only after that you now discuss the findings. Please note that the discussion of a finding is not comparison. It's not that, in Nigeria, 5 people had poverty. This is lower than what is in South Africa and it is higher than what is in America. No, this is not it. When you are discussing, you are explaining your study finding. 5 people in Nigeria had poverty compared to 3 in America and 10 in the US. And you explain it. This poverty, this reflects, the poverty status of the country. In Nigeria, the poverty index, we had the second to the last, the worst hit by poverty. And, you explain it. You explain it. This is where your intelligence comes in. It is your discussion that makes anybody quote your paper. People don't quote your paper because of your introduction. People quote your paper because of the intelligence you put in your discussion. I would decide to do a study based on the highlights of gaps that you have raised in your discussion. It's not your introduction. Your introduction is a summary of findings that already exist in the field. And it is therefore laden with references. Any statement you make there is not an opinion. Any statement in introduction is a concise representation of what is existing in the field. In the discussion section, this is where your opinion starts to show. And your opinion shows by explaining your finding. You discuss why you think we are seeing what you have seen. Okay, you discuss the outcomes of your association. You discuss why it is different from any other place in the world. You discuss why it is agreeing with other places in the world. This is your discussion. And it takes a lot of reading to be able to explain your study findings. These are common flaws. Failure to say as much as possible using a single table. You find out what you can do with a single table, as I've noted. You are writing it up with 5-6 tables. It's a waste of space and limited power. When you're reporting and discussing results that is outside the scope of the manuscript, please limit your scope of your result and your discussion to the objective. For example, my objective is to look for an association between age and sex. And then you found out that there are 4 females, 10 males. And then you start to discuss 4 females and 10 males. It's not your objective now. Your objective is to look at the association between sex and socioeconomic status. So you will discuss that association, not that, there are many males, and then you are writing a paragraph on the fact that there are many males. No, it is outside the scope. Another flaw that I find is that many people, you will be reporting the result in your discussion. No, you don't carry result again. So in your results, there's 2.6% of poor people. You don't come to result and start to say 6.4% are poor. You don't carry data from the results. You discuss your results. Most studies show that the level of poverty, the proportion of people that are poor is less than that in Ghana, whereby in Ghana it is 3.2%, something like that. You can report new data, but not your own. You don't bring your results raw into your discussion. Compare figures. Comparing figures are not explaining the phenomenon observed, thereby generating a new hypothesis. So this is a flaw, and I've already explained that. So you're comparing figures, but you're not explaining it. When you explain it, you tend to generate new hypotheses that somebody else can test and run with. Even you can build a new research based on the hypothesis you've now generated. So you'll be explaining why is it a new hypothesis. You are suggesting that this may be the reason for the observations you have found. You are explaining that this may be the reason for what you have found. So you remember the word maybe. You're explaining. So that generates a new hypothesis, and somebody else can go test that hypothesis. And please don't only test as significant association, discuss also associations that are not significant. Why do you think it's not significant? Always end up your discussion section with a recommendation. Always end up your discussion section with recommendations, okay? Based on, I repeat, based on the findings, not extraneous things that suddenly come, based on your findings. On that note, I say thank you for listening, and I'm open to questions now. Thank you. Okay. So I'll go into the chat box. If you do have questions, please put them in the chat box. Thank you. Good morning, Futai. Professor Badri, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Doshima, kindly share the sheets. About table. Okay, all right, I'll walk towards that. Please label your yes, thank you. Yes, Professor Ade Jimo says it's very true. Another serious pitfall is discussing only in terms of what others have found that is either in agreement or otherwise. Yes, Professor Ade Jimo, very right. You see that they just discuss, they just compare rather than discuss. So discussion is discussion, not comparison. Thank you very much for raising that, Professor Ade Jimo. And Professor Badru says mentoring and meticulous supervision will attenuate this. I agree. And one of the things you tend to find is when people aren't getting good supervision, they go bothering some other people that they think are good and can help them. So one of the things that I'm thinking also, especially for those in academia, is that we must continuously expose our senior people to training, because things change. The way we see science now is not the same like it was 5 years ago, believe me. And in another 2 years, it's going to change dramatically. So the senior people that are supervisors need to continuously be trained. And I think they can't come to early career researchers training because they're senior people. So we must consciously design trainings that are appropriate for senior people so that they can engage with themselves. I think this is very important. Thank you, Professor Badru and Professor Ade Jimo, for raising this. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Kofo. Thank you, Nore. Thank you, Taya. Thank you, Denny. Thank you, Tolulope. Thank you, Promise. Thank you, Opalaye. Thank you, Boma. Thank you, Vincent. I'm looking for questions. Thank you, Cornelius. Thank you, Aisha. So, Matthew Olatubu, I think this is a question. Isma, how do we know the demography of people that did not participate in the study, as you suggest? Excellent question. So when you go to the field and people, you have done a probability sampling. I'm not talking of a convenience sample. A probability sampling is the best. A probability sampling increases the prospect of people joining the study. So once you've done that, that means you have identified in whatever way you did in your stratification people that should. When you go meet them and you explain the study and they say no, you don't want to participate, you ask politely for them to just give you the basic demography. It's a male, their age, and I don't know the basic demographics your study wants to, just collect the basic demographics. So you can use that to report. If it's a convenient sampling, basic demographics is not, it has no value, except if you are doing online. Once you go online, you'll find that some people, out of 100 people that assessed, your online tool can get those demographics. So 100 people actually assess, and then at the end of the day, only 95 consented to participate. So you have a 5% fallout. If you go to your back house, you would see the people that assented and the people that consented, the people that did not consent. Okay, so that way you can check about your the fallout rate or the completion rate, or so you have a demographic profile. And then, of course, if you are doing qualitative, people will refuse to participate. When you meet them, take their demographics as the minimum. That way you can talk about the demographics of your fallout. I hope that helps you, Matthew Olatubi. Yes, thank you, everyone that's saying thank you. Thank you, Professor Oseni. It says another additional concern is avoiding cherry-picking results. Excellent. Thank you, Professor Oseni. That means when you have your result, you discuss only those things that you want to discuss. Remember that your result is already linked to your objective. So your result answered your objective. Your discussion must discuss everything that was your objective, whether it is significant or not. Your result is answering your objective. Your discussion is discussing the outcome of your objective. So your objective is to look at, when you're summarizing, your objective is to look at the association between age and sex. When you're summarizing the outcome. Age was associated with sex and it supported my hypothesis. It was not, or it was partial. You summarize and then you discuss it. Why was it not significant? You know that you had an hypothesis. If you develop things well, why did it not follow your hypothesis? Why did it follow your hypothesis? Remember that in the introduction, you used a theoretical lens. Discuss it based on your theoretical lens that you used. Or what you've seen is most likely a result of, use the theoretical lens also to discuss. It becomes very powerful. That's one of the things I've seen. One of the most powerful discussions comes when you use your theoretical lens to discuss your findings. I think in one of my papers, after discussing it, I now proposed the need for a new theory because my findings was not completely in alignment with what that theory proposed. And I could see the deviation and the possible point of deviation from that theory, and therefore proposed a new theory. I'm going to go back and work with people that do theory to see if I can move that to make a new theory that was relevant to the African context. Okay, so that discussion, yes, don't cherry pick. Thank you, Professor Oseni, for highlighting that. We have just about 7 more minutes. I acknowledge everybody saying thank you. Can we have a session on visuals in the future? Dr. Salami says that. We'll work towards it. We'll work towards doing more. Once I'm completed, I think what I could do once I've completed the session is to identify what other people want in terms of specifics. Once that call comes up, please, Dr. Salami, remember to do this about visuals. I think I have someone who has competency in doing that a lot, and then we can bring the person on board. Thank you, Dr. Oduyemi, and congratulations on your appointment as HOD. Awalu, thank you. Adeni asked a question. This question is on abstract. Please, is it compulsory we use figures and percentages in abstract? No, don't use figures or tables in abstract. Figures cannot go into abstract, but your result in abstract must include data. It must include data. That's one of the most powerful in your because your result, your abstract is a summary, a concise summary of the entire table. Many people, I think next week we're talking about abstract. Many people just read your abstract and that's all. And many people quote your paper based on your abstract. So we'll be talking about how to write a powerful abstract next week. No, you don't put figures in abstract. I don't know what you mean by figures. Or figures, I'm assuming figure is a drawing. No, I hope I'm not. But if it's about figures 13, 14, 15, and percentages is 13.3%, yes, they must be in your abstract. However, I do know that I've been to a journal before and they say don't put figures. I went to a journal. I was surprised. I'm used to writing figures. That journal said don't put figures. So please follow your journal's instruction. Thank you, Olatubi. I'm glad that the response answered your question. Patience. Thank you. You're welcome. Oshima, always good to see you here. I think we have just 4 minutes. Sorry, I'm struggling to scroll down. Toshima has a question. I think the number depends on the supervisor for number of or is there a citation to support numbers? Like I said, I'm using experience. I'm not talking about thesis. Remember, I'm talking about manuscripts, and I'm talking about Q1, Q2 journals. I'm not talking about every other journal. So just take my words as experience, not that it's written down. Thank you. Please, Prof, more explanation on variables on rows and columns. My network. So many times when you're drawing your tables, the dependent variable, the independent variable. Yes, the independent variable is usually on the column, and the dependent variable is on the row. That's usually how you set up the tables. The independent ones are on the column, and the dependent variables are on the rows. That's usually how you set up your table for most times. But of course, whichever way you write your table, you must be able to answer it, interpret it appropriately. Okay. Sorry, I think and how do we manage our allocation of words to the different sections without compromising on the content? Well, you must just choose to be concise in your presentation. So how do we manage our allocation of words to different sections without compromising the content? It's about being concise. Let me tell you how to be concise. If you, when you are editing, remove a whole sentence and there's nothing, you are not missing it, then that sentence is irrelevant. If you remove a whole paragraph and when you are reading it, nobody is saying something is missing, then it's not relevant. Be concise. Every word must matter. Every sentence must matter. If that sentence is not there, they will tell you, there's something missing. That is when you know that sentence is important. And I say this, for us as Africans, this is an exercise. For us as Nigerians, it's an exercise. You must train yourself on it. Because we are verbose, we are people with, one of the trends I've noticed over years, including in myself and how to train myself, we will say the same thing 2-3 times. You will say something, then you will repeat it again. Some people a third time. This is how we speak. We are verbose. We use too much words. You have to train yourself to be conscious, to use very little words. Conciseness. Every word must matter. Every word must have a relevance within there. So we have just a minute more. I want to say thank you everyone for being part of this. If there's any discussion, please take it forward into the chat box. I will be glad to take it from there. Otherwise, I wish everybody a wonderful day. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.